Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on this beautiful sunshiny Florida day. Hey, without the rain, we wouldn't have any oranges, right? So we're happy to have it. I'll call this meeting to order. Thank you for being in attendance. The first order of business is to approve the minutes that have been mailed to each of you. Are there any recommendations for changes? Hearing none, do we consider the minutes approved?
Yes.
You're here. Thank you. All right. We do have a special guest here. Yes. Would you like a vote?
A motion?
Yes, a motion. Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Last time I did that and everybody looked at me like, oh, that's not necessary. So I thought, well, try it this way. Okay. All right. So I do need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
And a second, please.
Second.
You gonna do both?
I'll do it.
I do have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Ernie. I appreciate that very much. We do have a special guest in the house. Mayor Ross is here. And so before we get on to our other business, we'd like to invite him
Thank
to
you.
approach the podium from that side of the dais.
Good evening, board members, and I am neither special nor a guest, but I'm happy to be here. And so again, I just want to thank you for your service to the city. I personally appreciate it. The staff appreciates it, and the entire city council appreciates it. So thank you again. I do have a subject I'd like to bring to you for your consideration. As I'm sure you probably know, if not, you're going to hear, we are in the process, or we did probably today, apply for the certified local government designation. That process takes some time. And during that interim, I understand that tonight kind of concludes the training process or some of that. And so after tonight, there's kind of a lag until we get the CLG. And so I would offer this idea for your consideration as something productive that we could really be a benefit to do during that lag. I would like to ask you if you would consider hosting an outreach meeting, perhaps at Lightfoot like we did when we were considering this program to begin with, and for you as a board to kind of take the lead in this, but in conjunction with city staff to invite certain members of the public, and obviously it would be open to anybody, but there might be specific people that you would want to reach out to and invite. The city staff would prepare a bit of a slideshow perhaps, or a bit of a presentation. We could perhaps have some of the success stories that we heard from Tampa and some of the examples of the projects that they've done and how this has been a benefit to both the property owner, the neighbors, the city, the value increase, those kinds of things. And for you guys to kind of be on hand to field any questions or mingle or encourage or arm twist or whatever we can do, but also to get some feedback too about, what would be meaningful for you to want to enroll in this, aside from the property tax incentives. We're talking about the plaques and we're talking about different designations, to maybe hear from the property owners, to hear from the property owners to say, what would be meaningful to you and what are your fears, and, can we talk about this? And so the last time we've really engaged the public like this was when we were considering the ordinance. And anytime you do something like this, no matter whether it's historical or roads or parks, it doesn't matter. There's always a fear element. People are always hesitant about what could happen. I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen, and that's what's going to happen. And so perhaps this would be an opportunity for you to kind of allay some of those fears and for staff to kind of educate people. So I'm not asking you to take another special event on your own, but our city staff would certainly be walking with you hand in hand. But that seems to me like a good project, a good endeavor to maybe take in this interval. So, and that's all I have, unless you have something for me, Madam Chair.
No? Any questions? No questions?
Hello.
So I'm very easy to find. I'm always around. So if something comes up that you concerns or on historic preservation or anything else, always feel free to call me. I'm sure everybody's got my phone number. So I'm very accessible, so if something comes up, don't jump on social media and rant, please give us a chance to straighten it out or call us, or, usually there's a story. As you know, you did this for a long time, so we're happy to help with whatever comes up, and usually we can resolve it. But there's no retract button on Facebook, so. Okay, thank you very much again for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Well, we have a request before us, but what do y'all think? How do you, are we willing to entertain this event?
Certainly.
So, I'd say yes.
I think it's important, at this stage, they kind of had a discovery meeting where they were gauging interest, and now that the CLG's been applied for, I think it's a good time to do it again.
I do too. Do you have a timeline? Or, it sounds to me like this, we're very agreeable, we're more than happy, and of course, he said the magic words that staff would be
Oh, definitely.
managing this event.
I'm trying to think timeline, probably just enough public notice so that people can plan to come to this event. Then we would need to prepare. The mayor said he would like to hear some, success stories. So just thinking, perhaps maybe we can invite a preservation planner from either Plant City or Tampa to come and attend this and perhaps share some success stories and why it works for them. That, of course, would depend on their availability. So I don't know, trying to work through this, how long it would take. And a couple months.
I was just gonna say, this doesn't sound like a springtime event. This is
No.
definitely either summer or early fall before we can get all of the players in place to be an
Really to
effective
have it-
workshop.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's more to come. Yes, okay. Well, as you can see, the group is agreeable, so I don't think we have to vote on something like this. I think we've all said, we're willing to participate and be more than happy to help however we can. Okay, all right. All right, we'll move along. We have a PowerPoint presentation from our Deputy City Attorney. Thank you, sir.
The man behind the curtain.
The man behind the curtain,
Hello.
okay?
I'm Ernie Mueller from the Legal Department, and today we are going to briefly discuss the legal basics behind variances. Pursuant to the Temple Terrace City Code, variances from specifically enumerated provisions of the Land Development Code can only be granted when an applicant has demonstrated that a literal enforcement of that provision will result in an undue and unnecessary hardship, and that the variance request ensures that the public health, safety, and general welfare are protected. Unnecessary hardship has generally been defined as a non-self-created characteristic of the property in question, which renders it virtually impossible to use the land for the purpose or in the manner for which.
Chair, while we're waiting, on that last item, did you want to put that like on unfinished business that would come up on a future agenda? The idea of the outreach,
That's,
so that it doesn't get kind of.
yes, thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Ernie Mueller from the Legal Department, and today we are going to briefly discuss the legal basics behind variances. Pursuant to the Temple Terrace City Code, variances from specifically enumerated provisions of the Land Development Code can only be granted when an applicant has demonstrated that a literal enforcement of that provision will result in an undue and unnecessary hardship, and that the variance request ensures that the public health, safety, and general welfare are protected. Unnecessary hardship has generally been defined as a non-self-created characteristic of the property in question, which renders it virtually impossible to use the land for the purpose or in the manner for which it is zoned. Practically speaking, especially for variances on residential property, this means when the code, as applied, unreasonably denies the property owner of the ability to use the property for a permitted use, as others in the same zoning district are generally able to do, and this is due to a unique circumstance or condition of the land. First, we have to note that, again, this is only hardships as to the land. I need extra storage space. I want a greenhouse. Or we have a growing family are not a condition of the land, and these cannot justify a variance. When considering whether what the applicant wants is something reasonable, we can look to the surrounding community. For example, does everyone have a pool, but because the applicant has a triangle-shaped lot while everyone else has rectangular lots, is the applicant unable to have a pool? In that scenario, there would be a hardship and a variance would be appropriate. This is actually an example from case law. In Lang versus Zoning Board of Adjustment, the applicant wanted an in-ground pool that would be 35 feet long and 18 feet wide, which was the minimum size pool that could accommodate a diving board. It was a typical sized pool for the area, but the applicant could not fit it on the property without a setback reduction because the location of the existing garage and driveway made it impossible to move the pool any closer to the north. The court found that this met the hardship requirement. Keep in mind, though, if the pool had not been a typical size for the area, or if it had not been the minimum size pool for the diving board, or if the pool could have been placed elsewhere on the property, the court may not have found a hardship. Let's consider another scenario. What if everyone in the area has rectangular lots, including the applicant, but no one is able to fit a pool? Let's say also the applicant wants this pool for physical therapy. In this case, a variance is not justified. The applicant wants a use that no one else has. A unique desire does not justify a variance, only a unique condition of the property. Some classic examples of when variances are justified include exceptionally narrow or shallow lots, unusually shaped lots, for example, a triangular corner lot, exceptional topography conditions. If they are on a steep slope, are there trees on the property? Extraordinary situations with a structure or building, all of which are not common to the other properties in the same zoning district or vicinity. Something unique about the property is required to establish the need for a variance. This brings us to another example from the case law. In Waltman versus Town of Yarmouth, there was a large area all with undersized lots. The setbacks made the lots impossible to develop, but this was true for all the lots in the entire subdivision. Here, there was no unnecessary hardship, where the hardship was not unique, but was one common to the general condition of the neighborhood. When everyone wants something, but no one can fit it, relief must come from City Council changing the code, not the board. If 100 properties have the same problem, relief should come from the way of a zoning code change, not 100 variances. Along those lines, common illegal structures will not justify a variance. For example, if everyone has built an illegal carport, that will not justify the applicant also having a carport. Variances are only justified when everyone else can legally have a structure or use, but this applicant, because of a unique property characteristic, cannot achieve the same structure or use. Also, what if the neighbor got a variance? Granting one variance does not guarantee granting another, but identical situations should be treated identically. So, if a neighbor got a front yard setback variance, but it was due to a grand tree in the rear of the property, and the applicant does not have the same condition of trying to save a grand tree, the variance should be denied. On the other hand, What if the front yard setback reduction was due to a canal that also affects this neighbor in the same way? Now a variance may well be justified. Some rules from the case law are: a hardship cannot be self-created. If the owner did something to cause this problem, that is not a hardship. The hardship cannot be one of mere economic disadvantage. Many people ask for a variance because of the expense of tearing down an illegal addition. This is never a hardship. The hardship cannot be personal. It must be related to the land. That is because all variances run with the land. And because all variances run with the land, an approval of a variance for a time period is not appropriate. All subsequent owners will enjoy this same variance. For the same reason, it does not matter that the current owner bought the land in a triangle shape, knowing that it would be difficult to develop. That prior owner would have also had that issue. However, if the owner buys a property wanting to use it for something unique, fully knowing the property cannot support that use, that is a self-created hardship that would not warrant a variance. Here are two examples to help illustrate. First, a property owner buys a triangle lot that cannot fit a reasonably sized home. The lot cannot fit a house similar in size or slightly smaller than those found in the neighborhood. This is a hardship created by the property that runs with the land. A variance would be warranted to allow a house to be constructed on the property. However, let's consider a second example. If a property owner bought a rectangular lot that could only fit a reasonably sized house similar to the neighborhood, and a small pool similar to the neighborhood, but now needs a variance to build a 5-car garage which nobody else in the neighborhood would have room for either, this person has simply purchased the wrong property. A variance is not justified. Likewise, if they ask for a variance for the garage for just a few years until they can move their cars, this would absolutely not warrant a variance. Now that we have reviewed the general rules for variances, let's go back to the city's land development code, which we said requires that the board find that the applicant has shown there exists an unnecessary hardship and that the request ensures the public health, safety, and general welfare will be protected. The burden is on the applicant to make these showings through competent and substantial evidence. Let's talk about the level of evidence that the applicant needs to demonstrate. Evidence is only competent if the witness is qualified to offer it. The evidence should be from personal knowledge. In addition, lay witnesses, like the owner of the property or neighbors, may only offer fact-based testimony. For example, if a witness testifies that the area has traffic problems, that is a lay opinion and is not competent. However, if a witness testifies that there were 3 traffic accidents with fatalities at this intersection last year, that is fact-based testimony and is competent evidence. Opinions can be competent, but only if they are offered by an expert in their field of expertise. Some examples would be: an arborist could offer opinion testimony about a tree's health or whether it could be pruned, but could not offer testimony about the value of the property. Only a witness qualified to offer property values, such as a property appraiser, may offer opinions of whether something will increase or decrease property value. Similarly, only a transportation expert may offer opinion testimony on traffic safety. But note that a neighbor could offer fact-based testimony that when they pull up to a particular intersection, that they cannot see traffic due to an obstruction. Other examples of testimony that would not be competent is subjective preferences, such as, "Nobody in our neighborhood wants this," or assumptions such as, "I am sure they will park on the streets and not the driveway." You may often hear that neighbors are in support or hear from neighbors that are against variances. Whether a neighbor is for or against the variance request falls within the ambit of opinion and is irrelevant. Again, you should focus on only the evidence given. So, the board is looking for this competent substantial evidence to determine whether there is an unnecessary hardship to warrant a variance and whether the request ensures that the public health, safety, and general welfare will be protected. To guide these core required findings, the city's Land Development Code provides 9 variance criteria for the board to consider for each variance request. All 9 criteria must be considered, though the individual variances might turn on only a couple of the criteria. The first criteria are A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property in question because of its size, shape, or topography. B, the application of the provisions of the city's Land Development Code to the particular piece of property would create an unnecessary and undue hardship which is not suffered in common with other properties, structures, or buildings in the same neighborhood. And C, such conditions are peculiar to the particular piece of property involved. These criteria focus on the uniqueness of the property, or a condition thereon, that the strict application of the city's Land Development Code would cause a hardship not suffered in common with other properties. The next 2 criteria are D, relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or impair the purposes and intent of the city's Land Development Code and the Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan. And E, no variance shall be granted for a use of land or building or structure which is not otherwise permitted by the city's Land Development Code. These 2 criteria focus on the impact of the variance request to neighbors and the public, as well as consistency with the city's Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan. As stated earlier, neighbors may testify they are or are not in support of the variance request, which would fall under the lay opinion testimony. However, the board may ask questions such as, will the variance request be compatible with or change the character of the neighborhood? Will the project increase noise or flooding? One thing to keep in mind with regard to consistency with the city code requirements is that any structures allowed by the granting of a variance will still be reviewed against the city's building code and fire safety code, so you do not need to worry whether those codes will be met. City staff will ensure that they are. The 6th criteria is F. Any variance granted shall be the minimum variance which makes possible the reasonable use of the land, buildings, or property. Any variance from the city's Land Development Code should not be more than necessary to allow the project. For example, most, if not all, variances are and should be granted in accordance with the site plan presented at the public hearing. Shown is a property and the principal structure setbacks. Let's suppose that someone shows a structure on the site plan that encroaches 3 feet into the side yard setback. If the variance is granted to allow the structure to encroach 3 feet into the side yard setback, the property owner could encroach 3 feet along the entire side yard setback. However, tying the variance to the site plan presented at the public hearing will restrict the 3 feet encroachment into the side yard to that part of the structure shown encroaching on the site plan. It would prevent the property owner from encroaching 3 feet along the entire side yard. The 7th criteria is G. The special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. This ensures that the hardship was not caused by the property owner. So what are some examples of a self-created hardship? If the property owner enclosed a carport to build another room, but now wants to build an accessory garage or another carport, but cannot do so without encroaching into the setbacks. That is a self-created hardship. If the property owner built an addition to the home, but now wants a pool with a deck and bird cage, but the pool cannot be placed in accordance with the city's land development code because of that addition, that is a self-created hardship. Attempting to use land beyond its means is a self-created hardship. Overbuilding for any reason is not a hardship. The cost of demolishing, rebuilding, or modifying an illegally built structure is always a self-created hardship. This is a good place to discuss how the board would handle a situation where the applicant has already built a structure that required a variance. Would this be a self-created hardship that would warrant the denial of the variance request? No. In this situation, you must consider the variance as if the structure that needs the variance was not there. The final two criteria are H, granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the city's land development code to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district or neighborhood. And I, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering both the public benefits intended to be secured by the city's land development code and the hardship that will be suffered due to denial of the variance. These criteria focus on striking a balance between the property rights of the property owner with the interests of the neighborhood and public at large. So remember, there should be something unique about the property, not the individual or what they want to do. Generally, you are looking for something unusual about the lot or its location. A triangular lot, tree location, unusually narrow lot compared to district standards. If the entire neighborhood has the same hardship, there is no uniqueness to justify a variance. Building illegally or overbuilding are not hardships. The variance should not cause problems for the neighborhood. Thank you for reviewing the legal basics of variances today.
Thank you for that. Any questions? No, no questions. I do have a question, and that is this presentation available in print for our new?
Yeah, well, yes, I do have the PowerPoint itself. I can
Okay.
have it all sent to you.
Okay,
Or actually, I can probably, what you're asking, probably ask Jen to
Yes.
place it in the folder. But
if you could provide us with that, that would be great. Thank you. So no questions? It's interesting. I was thinking back to quite a few variances
Some
I've listened to.
Me too.
We won't go into that. Not the right place. Okay, we're moving, yes, yes, please.
I am curious if someone comes before the board requesting a variance, you said it's incumbent upon them to come with evidence or expert testimony. So if they get to us, they should have all of that in place, and if they don't, we just say, I'm sorry, you don't have enough evidence to support your request, or?
right, if that were the case, if this board, if they come forward, again, they'll have the burden. They're the ones that are requesting for this extraordinary remedy to allow them to basically violate the code. You're giving them permission to violate the code with a variance. So the burden's on them to present the evidence that satisfies this board that a variance would be justified. If this board does not feel that there's been enough evidence, there's a couple of ways to go. There could be a continuance to allow that applicant to gather that information. If you guys feel for some reason it would have been difficult for them to do that. And again, in that type of situation, just remember, whenever an application is in front of you for a variance or anything along the, that you're here to provide, the applicant always has the right to have that application voted up or down that night. it's up to them to ask for the continuance. You know, the board on its own wouldn't be able to say, let's continue this, and then you move to continue it, blah, blah, blah. So it'll always be the decision of the applicant on that. So kind of the final way is if you feel there is not insufficient evidence to warrant, then it would be, you'd move to deny that variance.
Now, we are not taking the place of the code board, so we're not going to be getting variance requests for things that are your normal requests. We're only going to be getting historic nature, correct?
Actually, probably better stated, yeah, if most, variance requests, if they're not gonna be on a historic property or someone that's applied to have their, property designated as historic, would go to the Board of Adjustment. They do the normal, variance requests. Yeah, the board would only be getting those variance requests that are associated with, basically a project that someone's doing on their historic property that they're gonna need permission from you to do.
Right.
And usually it'll come in the form of an addition on the property or something along that lines. One thing as I was listening to that, I thought I might wanna explain a little better. Brian, are you able to go to slide 15, which showed the diagram of?
Right.
And I put my mic on. They're working on it, they're trying to find it. I want to kind of explain the setbacks. I noticed in a couple of places I said they can't, if they want to put a house on, but it won't fit. I could tell it almost made it sound like it wouldn't fit on the
Wouldn't
property.
fit on the property, right?
So let me explain that and what, really where you guys will have requests for variances, which is this concept of called a setback.
Shows a structure on the site
Perfect,
plan.
Brian. Thank you. All right, as you can see, the green outlines is really the property line, all right? And then if you take, let's call the bottom of this picture being the front yard and the top being the rear yard, and then of course we got our side yards. The city has developed through its land development code setbacks, meaning, you can't build in these areas. And usually your front yard setback runs somewhere between 15 to 25 feet, so the house is kind of set back away from the street. You'll have side yard setbacks so that everybody isn't on top of each other. And usually that's for, fire safety reasons, stuff like that. And then, of course, you have your rear yard setbacks. So that gray area is what's called the buildable area. That's all within those setbacks. So as this picture shows, someone was wanting to do something that would encroach into that side yard setback. And that's where you're gonna be getting probably 90% of your requests for variances. They're either gonna wanna go into that rear yard setback, side yard setback, and in rare occasions, they may need to push something forward because there's something perhaps in the backyard, as the PowerPoint kind of tried to explain. Sometimes someone might have to push something forward. Is that any clearer? Did I, as far as kind of setbacks, how setbacks work and where, people would be wanting a variance with regard to the setbacks?
Yeah, it's clear. I'm just having trouble thinking about a kind of concrete example of like an additional historical kind of element to the requesting a variance, because the building itself wouldn't create a condition related to the property, or would it? The fact that the
Meaning
building,
an existing building?
yeah,
Sometimes. I
okay,
mean, that's been, I think, if
That's
I
been the
understood
biggest.
the outreach last time we did it, there was a little bit of concern that sometimes, the historic houses are already not conforming
Right.
to our
Okay.
land development code. So there may be issues there, especially, and if someone wants to extend somewhere. What I will try and do is look at the City of Tampa's ARC and BLC, if you remember we talked, the Architectural Review Commission, and see if I can find some where they talk about variances as it's related to a historic property. And then I can ask if, Jen or someone to send those, I'll get some links and send that to you. And that maybe you can kind of see it in action. It's always easier to see in action rather than trying to imagine how this works.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? A lot to digest, and I'm sure,
Yeah, don't expect you to know it right away. That's what these training sessions are for.
right. And everything coming before us will have gone through some process to get here.
Meaning the staff will
Yes.
have,
Yes.
done some vetting on it and stuff like
Right.
that.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to discussion on incentives.
So I just listed a couple of things. These were things that we talked about with council, and I will go over them with you, see what you think. The first one, of course, the incentive is it's voluntary. You know, nobody's going to put a gun to your head to make you do this. This is just a benefit to you if you so choose. Designating a historic property both locally or in the National Register is a prestigious honor and officially recognizes the historic or architectural significance of the property. Studies commissioned by the Florida Department of State found that designation of a historic property improves marketability and increases property values. Now, this one, we talked about application fees, but, and I went over this with the Community Development Director and our Deputy City Attorney about the application fees. We considered waiving the fees, but there are no fees. We have not put any fees in place, so there's nothing to waive. So for a certain time period, there's no charge. You can just apply. And at some point, we'll have to come up with a fee schedule to go before council through resolution. But until that time, no charge. And in looking at what other cities charge or don't charge, there are some that actually don't charge. They've decided not to charge at all. And then other fees go up to about $300. But that does not include, of course, the building permit. That's separate. So your application for designation or your certificate of appropriateness, no charge. And as Mr. Fernandez explained at the last meeting, there's also access to financial incentives, ad valorem tax exemptions on historic property improvements for 10 years. And this would be fun, a photo display of enrolled properties on our website. So anybody who comes into the program, their property will go on the website with a history of the property and a nice picture. And I'm sure that will be, a wonderful addition to our website. And then Marissa's going to talk about this last one. It's about bronze markers, which we have talked about before, but she's going to go into a little bit more detail.
Good evening, everyone. I did leave a copy of the City of Tampa's bronze markers that they provide for their historic landmarks and their historic properties. We are contemplating something that would be similar to this, that would be mounted onto the front facade of the house. At this time, though, we spoke with the marketing department, and we've decided to wait until after the flag contest is complete to design the markers. So, once the flag competition is completed and we have picked a new city flag, then we will go back and design our historic markers. And so hoping that we can coordinate something to resemble the flag. So, and we're hoping that these will be free as well. They will be of no charge to the applicants. So,
Any questions on that? Okay.
okay.
Oh, no, I mean.
Oh, sorry.
So if it's free, do we have an idea of what this will cost the city to do?
City of Tampa charges $174.
And that covers the cost of this bronze plaque and nothing else. So why are we considering it to be free?
Just as an incentive, again, we can go back and we can create a fee schedule and add a fee to this incentive.
I'm not opposed to it being free, I
Yeah.
just, since it does have it's not like it's $10 plaque, it's, you know, 100 and some dollars plus installation or whatever, so I just wondered what the idea was. I like the idea that, to incentivize it, which makes a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it will be the rare exception for someone to have it.
Yes.
Just to add, by the time we get up and moving, it's going to be, a couple months out. It's possible if you wanted to offer these, to put this in a budget to present to the city manager, to give to council. However many do you think that you would need, we can make that request.
Okay, that's probably a good way to do it, so that we know it's covered, and then the city could always say, well, we're gonna suspend the fee at this time, or until we get the program up and running and everyone wants one, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for bringing this. And these are in Tampa, I take it, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Didn't we talk about the budget for our board? I think you mentioned that you wanted to see if we could have money,
What kind of budget?
and then
Right.
maybe it'll come from that budget.
Yes, yes, that was a mini discussion that we had, and because we do, at this time, it really isn't our budget to determine. Is there a line item for the historic preservation?
I believe the advisory boards have a line item in the city clerk's budget. I know Riverwatch Task Force has a budget. Does anybody else have a budget? So school support and Centennial, yeah. So, it's a possibility.
Well, we, at this point, we have nothing to ask for. So, but it definitely, and I can see that we're going to be doing quite a few things where we talk about it at one meeting and then, we don't make a decision, but I'm more than happy to bring it up again at a later time. So, of course, as long as the deputy city clerk keeps us straight, we'll be fine on that. Thank you for doing that. All right, so we have an agenda item for the next meeting, which is our website, and who will be bringing that to us?
Yeah, I imagine unless there's something else you want to add to it, I mean, we can talk about the website and the outreach. When we'll have a better indication of when we'll be able to get that together. I'm hoping by the end of May. I think that would be good before summer starts. That would give us enough time to put a presentation together and to invite,
For the outreach?
yes,
Okay.
before summer gets up and running, if that's amenable to you all.
Hearing any discussion? Not hearing any discussion? This is such a quiet board. Thank you. I think that would be great if you can look at it, and if it's appropriate to put it on the agenda, please do so.
Okay.
I don't want to say you must come back to us in a month, so I would like for it to be, open-ended somewhat. If it's not prepared, if you're not ready, then don't put it on the agenda. Unless you just want to tell us where you are, that would be great.
That too.
Okay, all right. All right, any other comments, ideas? We're such a wonderful group. Mayor, are you, oh, yes.
Is there anything on next month's agenda that you would like me to discuss further or in more detail regarding historic preservation?
I myself don't have any. If you do think of one, please send it to Deputy Clerk so that you can know what they're thinking, because it's very possible that somebody will think of something as they driving around Temple Terrace or read something about another city. I know anytime anything about that comes up, I'm now reading the entire article because I feel like I need to know what someone else is doing, so.
Yeah, if there's anything else you want to discuss further, I'm more than welcome
Okay.
or willing to.
So, and everybody understands the way to do that, correct? Just send it directly to the deputy? Okay. All right, anyone in the audience have anything they would like to say?
Chair, I have one more thing.
Yes, sir.
I can chime in with. Perhaps in the next meeting or one in the future, I'll kind of talk a little bit about the motions you would be doing, be it a motion to grant.
Thank
or a
you.
motion to deny.
Yes,
And I'll also provide some scripts. You guys won't have to do this cold. I will create some scripts for you to deal with certificate of appropriateness, the tax exemption, the variances, all that, that'll help you out. So don't think you have to wing it. I'll try, make sure that you got some scripts in
Thank
front of
you.
you. I'm not sure how quickly I can get to them, but I guarantee you will have them before your first case.
and that's really all we could hope for. And so would the applicants. They're going to want to know that we have our arsenal intact. Yes, thank you. Okay, anything else?
I have nothing.
No? Anyone? Anyone? No? No? All right, well, we are adjourned at, it looks like 5:45. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ernie